And up and namaste, guys. Christian Arlong, life enhancement consultant, giving you a big and beautiful shout out on today. Another Mahatma project. Great, spreading the message of great souls, doing great work. And we have Lisa Wimberger bringing the heat for today from Neuro Sculpting Institute.com. Now, a little interesting nugget, if you will, about Lisa, that I'm privileged enough to know her. So many of you know that I just recently started doing this thing called Zouk dancing, which is a 1980s Brazilian partner art form of dancing. It's kind of like if you took hip hop and you took salsa and they had a baby. That's basically what Zouk is with better music, in my humble opinion. So I've been doing it for about 2 months, and I had a great opportunity of meeting Lisa, who's been doing Zouk much longer than me. And everybody at the event that I ran into says, "Do you know Lisa? Do you know Lisa? Do you know Lisa?" She does this thing called Neuro Sculpting, and it's changed my life. And I was like, "Well, what's Neuro Sculpting?" She's like, "You got to go to her website. You got to go to one of her events. You got to. And I was like, "All right, fine." But Lisa, being a very humble person, never brought anything up about it at all. And I'm the one that had to reach out to her on social media and say, "Lisa, let's get together and maybe you could share a little bit about your story and how you got into neurosculpting and how it's impacted your life and the lives of the people that you work with." And guys, she has a whole system going on. Not only does she have a whole system going on, but she also has a whole program to train other people into teaching this system and spreading it throughout the country and hopefully throughout the world. And she's done, 4 different audio programs, 1 adult book for guys like me.
1 kid's book.
And 2 adult books, 1 kid's book, which I probably get benefit out of the kid's book.
Let's clarify. By adult books, we don't mean pornography. We mean like grown-up books.
See how Lisa shows up, guys? That's what I love about her. She's so authentic and to the point and candid. It's beautiful. So, yes, 2 adult books for adult readers, not for people that are in the adult industry. Which, I mean, if you're in the adult industry, you could probably read it. Yeah, you get benefit because we all have brains and we could all improve our neurology, right? So I want to give, as usual platform, I want to give Lisa the floor to share a little bit about her story, where she came from, right? Because these projects are about people who need a tremendous amount of healing personally in their lives, and through the healing process, ta-da, they're able to come out, rise from the phoenix, rise from the ashes, and become great lights for other people. So Lisa, you have the floor. Please share your story.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, it's really fun when my dance world and my other worlds collide. And but that's kind of true for everybody. We're all multidimensional, and you never get to know all of somebody in a short amount of time. So this is really fun for me. So I grew up as a meditator. I grew up at the age of 12. I learned self-hypnosis, and I was a very fanatical, religious kind of meditator. Not religious in the sense that I was going to church, but I was taking meditation on in my life as though it were a religion. It replaced my religion. I grew up Catholic, and meditation replaced it for me. It was my go-to. It was my escape. It was my day-to-day world. But when I was 15, I had an accident. On my birthday, I was hit by lightning in the base of the spine. And very quickly after that, I started having blackouts. But I didn't know what was happening in the blackouts. Very long story short, after having these for 15 years, I was diagnosed because I accidentally had one in a doctor's office. Now, I had been to doctors before. I had told my parents I'm having these blackouts. My friends witnessed them, but nobody really could put a finger on it. They did blood tests. Seemingly I was fine. But when I had my episode in the doctor's office 15 years later, what I woke up to was my diagnosis, because apparently I was having grand mal seizures. I didn't know I was having grand mal seizures. So I had a grand mal seizure in his office, and my heart stopped, and I flatlined. And I woke up to this needle of atropine, which is to resuscitate either a very slow or a stopped heart. And I woke up to the doctor freaking out, shaking, telling me, "You flatlined. you went blue. I couldn't get you breathing. You didn't tell me you had grand mal seizures. I didn't know I had grand mal seizures. I knew I had been blacking out since I was 15, probably a couple times a year. I knew that as I got older, by the time I was 19 or 20, they were extremely difficult to come out of. So I would have these blackouts, seizures, and I would be on the floor for hours, unable to move my muscles. Sometimes I urinated myself. Sometimes I defecated myself. You can't really hold your bowels in these kinds of things. Unable to move or get up. And they were getting worse and worse in the recovery phase. Like by the time I was in my mid-20s, I had to lay in bed probably for a whole day afterwards just to kind of rally. But he gave me my diagnosis. They sent me to the ER. They did brain scans. They did all the stuff they need to do. Turns out I didn't have any abnormal cortical activity. I was not epileptic. So what was this? Well, he gave me the diagnosis that I had vasovagal hyperactive syncope, which is basically a brainstem initiated response to stress, regulated by the vagus nerve, which goes from the brainstem down the full length of the spinal column. And it's not cortical activity because it's brainstem. So it's not considered epilepsy. But what it does is its job is when you're super stressed, the vagus nerve, one of the vagus nerve's jobs is to drop your heart rate very quickly so that you go very, very still and quiet. It's a profound inward retreat. It's a reptilian response, basically. It's the reptilian response designed to protect us from being seen, discovered, heard. And as reptiles, what it does is it prevents them from putting out thermic heat because it stops their heart. It's the hibernation thing. It's reptilian. Now, and humans have it. We all have access to freeze, but in a vasovagal syncope / seizure disorder, it's profoundly hyperactive. So what was happening to me was I was experiencing stress, and my in a mammalian way, which is fight and flee. And so instead I reverted to a very primitive freeze response, and I would just exit and have these seizures because when your heart stops, you don't have oxygen to the brain. So that's why you kind of have these seizures. That's what was happening. And I didn't know until 15 years later. And consequently developed a lot of stories over those 15 years about I'm broken. Why is this happening to me? I'm a victim. All the stories that come with the unknown. And that's kind of what I did was I developed these stories. I developed great coping skills, and I was using meditation more and more and more to try to recuperate from these things and make sense of it. But what I was really doing was I was using meditation to escape dealing with it. I didn't even know what it was. When I got my diagnosis, and he told me it was a stress-induced response, my whole world shattered because I thought, I'm a meditator my entire life. I don't have any real severe trauma other than the lightning strike. What could I possibly be stressed about? And that's where all the light bulbs went off, a series of light bulbs. The first one was, I'm using meditation wrong. I don't know how to use meditation. The second one was, I'm using it like a drug, and that's not healing me. The third was, I have no idea how my body works, and I better learn that. So these light bulbs went off. I started studying neuroscience and central nervous system and everything I could about the vasovagal situation. And I came up with a process that I was learning could be easily attained. Mind states could be easily attained according to what neuroscience was teaching me, according to what medical neuroscience was teaching me. I could affect a whole bunch of influence over my vagus nerve that no meditation was teaching me. So, but meditation was also the vehicle to help with that. So I had to put the two things together. I had to take my science education, merge it with meditation, and basically deconstruct my meditation practice and rebuild it with very brain-based entrainment steps so that I could get my central nervous system and my primitive brain highly receptive to breaking an old pattern and creating a new one. And I had to play with that process for a while. Eventually, what ended up happening was I was my own guinea pig, and I played with the process so much to try to entrain a different response to stress. And when that seizure halo hits, you only have a couple seconds, not even, before you're gone. So I was trying to entrain a new response by making my brain receptive and then practicing in like these mental practices. And when I finally found a kind of a process that worked, I did it like every day for months and months. And eventually a seizure came, and the rehearsal script that I had been rehearsing for months before that kicked in, and I didn't have a seizure. It was the first time in my life I had stopped a seizure. And that was decades after I started seizing. And I never had one again. I had halos, but then this process kicked in and moved me through it without seizing. And at that point, I knew what I was doing was a little bit more strategic than the kinds of meditations I was trained in. I was trained in TM and Ascension and the energetic techniques of the Berkeley Psychic Institute. I have a lot of metaphysical. This was different. This was so physiological, and it was working. So I knew I passed my litmus test. And so I quit my job and committed my life to teaching this. I didn't have a name for it at the time. And the name came quickly. No, actually the name came like 5 years after I was teaching this.
Oh, wow.
I was teaching it. I was calling it all different things: meditation for stress. And then one day, 5 years after I was doing, having private clients and doing workshops, someone said, you need to call this something to let people know what this is. So that's where the name Neuro Sculpting came from. And so I've been teaching this for about 11 years. It grew into an institute 5 years ago. It grew in my private practice, and my consulting grew into a home base, which was an institute. That was in 2012. And then a whole bunch of books and programs came out. And then the institute now is international. I mean, we have students all over the world. We even have our first certified trainer in Australia that just graduated last 2 months ago.
Awesome.
And now we're an intern site for Europa University, and so they can send their interns here when they graduate, so they can do their placement here and also learn neurosculpting, so they can use it as an adaptive modality if they decide to get trained. So it's gone in directions I never planned. All I know is that once I stopped having seizures, I needed to help others. And so that's where it's gone. I mean, it's gone to my private practice is high trauma. I teach police officers. I go into police agencies. I've trained like 2,000 officers at this point. I've trained first responders like FBI and CIA and Secret Service. And then my private practice is those with addictions and anxiety and depression and cutters and traumatic brain injury. And we have a spinal cord injury program here at the Institute on Mondays where we help people rewire how their motor skills work. The application is gone in directions I never ever planned or thought, and that's the whole story.
I love it. I love it. You said something, Lisa, that I have yet to hear a spiritual practitioner say in all my years in this world of 18 years of doing spiritual practices and metaphysical studies and working all over the world. You said meditation for me became an escape. And I thought that is so apropos because my understanding, because I got involved in meditation because of a lot of trauma in my family, a lot of inner stress. I had a resting heart rate of 125 beats a minute, sitting down and doing nothing. So I use it as a healing mechanism of trauma. So I love that you were making the distinction of instead of using it to have an optimal life, I was simply using it to escape life itself. You want to quote unquote transcend, right, the physical reality. So how is it now integrated for you of living this spiritual life while still being in a physical body, which is true yoga?
Yeah, so I was a profound dissociator, and a lot of us are, I was taught in my TM practice, my ascension practice, that I'm more than this body. And that's true. Of course it's true. We're more than the body, we're spirit. But I was taught to take life's experiences and frame them as in, that doesn't really matter because I'm not this body. So you give that to a dissociator already, and you just gave them the icing on the cake of their dissociation. I already didn't want to be in my body. I already was numb to what my body was telling me. And now I've got a meditation practice that says, man, guess what? You're not your body. So you don't even have to worry about it. And I was like, yes, free pass. So that's how I used it. How it shows up now is that I still do other meditation forms, but they do take me away. And I've learned how to be in my body so well that taking me away is actually wonderful now. But to someone like me who had to I first had to learn to find safety in my body. I had to learn to love my body, to not let body trauma cause me to go numb or dissociate. I had to first learn to be in my body so that other spiritual practices that I love, that took me out to realms expansive and bigger than myself, didn't keep me there to the point where I couldn't function in day-to-day life. So there's a balance that has come from the neurosculpting, which is neurosculpting is really fantastical imagery and meditation, but we interrupt the meditation at every juncture with, what's your body doing right now? Where is your body signaling you? So we're constantly in neurosculpting, jumping back and forth between, oh, did you go really far and does that feel great? Great, now what's your body doing? We want to create a relationship between these expansive realms and the body, because we still have to live in this thing.
Totally. That's why we were here, right?
Yeah.
If we weren't supposed to be here, we wouldn't be here in a physical body.
Right. So for me, the science has expanded my spiritual world 10,000 times. And that was a surprise. Didn't expect that.
Love it.
Didn't expect. I mean, I studied for 4 years with the Shia monks back in New York when I lived there. I did 4 years with this Berkeley psychic curriculum. I never expected that medical neuroscience would just amplify all of that stuff. I didn't, but it ended up happening that way, where the dialogue between spirit and body is more direct, and so therefore spiritual access feels more instantaneous. It feels more accessible in all moments, because the body's not getting in the way. It's not fighting it. It's not resisting it. It's being a vessel that I've learned to navigate so that all this stuff could come in and come through. I remember one time I was at a festival and someone was having a really hard time. They were probably tripping out, and they were really, really having a hard time. And I said, hey, what's going on? And he said to me, oh man, I'm so ungrounded. I'm just flying out there. And I said, well, do you want me to help you come back and get grounded? And he snapped out of it and he said, why would I ever want to be grounded? And I went, that was me.
Yeah.
Why would I ever want to be in this little body that is dysfunctional and keeps crapping out at the most inopportune moments? I had to learn to fully want to be in my body so that the spirit could come all the way in and not just kind of dip its toe in a spiritual way, but to just fully be there. And so I got surprised a lot by science.
So I'm a stressed out firefighter. I'm a paramedic who went to a scene with a child that was dead on arrival. I'm a rape victim. I'm somebody that has a tremendously high level of trauma, maybe multiple episodes throughout years. I go to you, what's the process?
The process is, the first thing I like to tell everybody is, okay, we're not doing therapy because I'm not a therapist. So what we're going to do is find where these thought patterns hijack your body. That's what we're going to do. So what I do is I give them a little bit of education around the stories and the pictures that keep replaying in your mind. Here's the biological reason they keep replaying. Here's the efficiency patterns that they latch onto. Here's why it's normal for that to happen and why you're not really broken. You're just very efficient in a very primitively driven protection mode right now. So first we get them to understand the physiological connection between PTSD thoughts and the body hijack and a normal protective response. Then we get them to understand when these thoughts come up, what's happening in your body. We want them to create a map of thought equals this body hijack, or this body hijack triggers this thought. We want them to start connecting the way the thoughts play with the central nervous system. Then we walk them through guided neurosculpting meditations, which are guided by facilitators who know very intimately the process of brain entrainment so that it's done with safety, so that we don't re-traumatize anybody, and so that people get to navigate it on their own and they don't feel like they're developing a relationship with a guru or something like that. It's very self-empowering. So we walk them through these meditations where we have them touch the thoughts in their mind a little bit in a very specific way, and then start to breathe differently and release through the body. Touch the thought, release through the body. Back and forth until we chip away at the bidirectional feedback loop of body contraction and protective mode and thought repetition and the nature of the thoughts. Eventually, people can actually discharge those thoughts completely so that they become just like any other memory. Part of my history, but not part of my present day drive. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we can get there with clients, and it takes a while for depending on the level of trauma. Mm-hmm. But really what we try to do is empower people with a bunch of tools: physical practices, meditation practices, nutritional approach to down-regulating a contraction pattern. Mm-hmm. There's a very specific nutritional approach to that, and physical exercises. So it's kind of like a comprehensive thing we give them, but the real strategy comes in with the meditations. And if it's a private client, we derive the meditations specific for them. Mm-hmm. And if we're doing a class, teaching a class, then we offer people kind of generalized meditations, and then we help them understand how they can tweak them for themselves.
Beautiful. And what would you say the biggest factor that helps somebody go from high trauma to being able to function, not just functional, but actually be optimal? What is the biggest factor that allows them to go from point A to point Z? And then where do you see as the biggest sticking point for people to transform their lives using neurosculpting?
Good questions. Okay, there's two answers to the first question. The first one is, once people can identify that they're not broken, everything changes. People come in thinking they're broken because they have anxiety or whatever.
Right.
The bottom line is, the brain is not broken. The brain is efficient. And it's either efficient in favor of your well-being, or it's efficient in favor of contraction, which does not feel very good. So we help people understand what brain efficiency is around patterns. If you spark and spiral into negative patterns, your brain is just using neuroplasticity at its optimal efficiency to continue those patterns. Once we get people to understand, oh, I'm just diverting all my brain's efficiency energy in the wrong direction. I'm not broken. I just need to redirect it this way and create new efficiencies. That's the first aha moment for people. That's the biggest piece, is for people to, because it gives them hope. They find hope. Mm-hmm. The second big piece is to let them understand that through nutrition and exercise and mental entrainment, we're going to teach you to downregulate the body hyper. We're going to teach you to downregulate that limbic response. And those are the two biggest things. And all the rest is nuances and depth that they get to go to with their own level of healing. The biggest thing in the way of that, the very tricky concept, because the brain is a prediction machine and is only on all levels interested in adapting in the moment, creating a script for what just happened storing that so then I can access that tomorrow and not have to navigate from the ground up. Again, efficiency and prediction. Once we understand that, the ironic biggest hurdle is that approaching healing for many people is actually proposing a change to their life. Doesn't matter that the change is a miracle. Doesn't matter that the change is beautiful or a treasure. Change to the brain can trigger a stress response because it's a threat to prediction. So that's the irony, is that we teach people how to play with the prediction aspects of their brain, knowing full well that the moment you get close to healing, you may actually try to sabotage or go right back to your patterns, because the brain is going, wait, I know that's really good and that's beautiful, but I don't know how to navigate that, so I'm going to go back over here. So it's a tricky dance. When people get real close to healing, that's when sometimes they're most inclined to kind of self-sabotage, and we help people through that process. It's very interesting. It's the reason why people who have all these pictures around self-worth win the lottery and they're broke again in 2 years. Because the change had no roadmap, even though it was the solution. It had no roadmap, so they went right back to old patterns. It's the same reason why domestic violence victims go to protect their assailant when at the precise moment where the cops come and offer them salvation. In fact, for cops, that's the absolute worst call they could have, is domestic violence, because they know that the victim, at the mere thought of being saved, has a high likelihood of flipping into full protective mode and attacking. And that's their worst call, is domestic violence. And it works off this principle that change is a threat to the brain.
Man. So not only do you support them through the process of transforming from where they are, of high trauma, to optimal living and optimal functioning, but you also say, by the way, through our experience, we know that there's going to be, at some point in the healing process, pretty much towards the end, there's going to be the resistance and there's going to be the pushback. But guess what, guys? We're letting you know that it's coming. It's okay when it comes, and we're going to assist you through that process.
Absolutely.
Love it.
It's the same thing my doula told me before I went into labor. She said, remember, the moment you are, not to get graphic, but the moment that you are totally dilated and ready to push is the most painful moment. And that's the moment you're going to hear yourself say, I can't do this.
Yep.
And that's exactly what happened. The moment where you go from one state of being through the veil to the next is kind of like a death of the old ways. And that will spark you. And I literally heard come out of my mouth, I changed my mind. I don't want to have this baby. And then my daughter was born like 2 seconds later.
Love it. Way to push through. Literally, way to push through.
I really don't have
a great life. So my final, I hope you guys are enjoying this, because Lisa's been super generous with her knowledge and her time, so we are grateful for that. And I want to get one, you mentioned the word miracle, which is one of my jams. That's like the word I use very often in my practice. Of all your years, of your 11 plus years of doing this work, what's one miracle or client that most stands out in your mind?
Oh my God, I have so many, but my favorite, I'll give you my favorite. And I'm going to tell you, you should go to my YouTube channel, Lisa Wimberger, and you should look at the playlist called Alternative Radical Healing with Neuro Sculpting, because I've documented this particular client. There's 3 videos of her. She's a quadriplegic and paralyzed hands, paralyzed from the waist down. And we were working on stress together for about 6 sessions 3 years ago when she first came to me. And then I found out her story, and I found out she was thrown from a horse. And I looked at her, and I know enough about anatomy to know that there were things about her physiology that didn't make sense with her injury. She's subluxed C3 up here. She's partial severed. C3 is really high up bad news, everything from here down, you're done. But she could use her arms and she could breathe. So I knew something was wrong with the total picture. So I knew most of her paralysis was from the injury, but I also suspected some of her paralysis was from the stories of being paralyzed. So I asked her in session 7, and I was videotaping because I videotaped all of my sessions with her. I said, what were your hands doing the moment you were thrown? She said, well, I was gripping the reins. And I said, does that look like this? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, let's play with that. So in that meditation, instead of working on stress, I had her go to the moment of being thrown, and I had her change the pattern of the memory. And I said, you're still obviously thrown from the horse, but what if you just told yourself to let go right before you were thrown? Because you're going to be thrown anyway. And she said, oh, okay. And we did this whole, neuro sculpting thing. And when she came out of the meditation, she moved her thumbs 3 times each. It's caught on film. It's on that playlist. And we've been working together ever since. In fact, she and I have created Spinal Cord Injury Monday at the Institute, where we do Thai massage, stretching, private neurosculpting, and then adaptive yoga. So the Institute's closed to the public on Mondays, but we have 2 individuals in chairs, and we're adding more to this program, and we just provide services for them because I've seen the results of, I've seen miracles in Heather's body. I have a video of her twisting on a bottle cap. I have videos of her moving her fingers after we trick her visual system into like a virtual stim kind of situation. This woman is amazing, and she's one of many surprise miracles that I have experienced here.
I love it. I love it, Lisa. Girl, you're doing some good work, some great work. Very good. Thank you for taking your high-level trauma and transforming it into a miracle in your own life, and then spreading that throughout the lives of thousands of people around the world. So I love it.
Thank you.
So guys, if you have any questions, go to neurosculptinginstitute.com, and if you don't know how to spell neuro, figure it out on your, I don't know, on your phone or something. So neurosculptinginstitute.com, and then if you're watching this on YouTube, we'll have all the description and social media links and all that stuff below, so you guys can tap into that. And it's been a pleasure, Lisa. Thank you for sharing your time and your energies and your vast knowledge of, well, the brain and the body connection. I love it. And for all of you spiritual people who aren't very grounded, I want you to think about Lisa and how you can be integrated. You can go even higher in this inner world if you are grounded and connected to your physical body, into your neurology. So thank you guys very much. This is Lisa and Christian from the Mahatma Project, spreading the message of great souls doing great work. And you guys know how to find me because you're watching this video, so I don't even have to give you any information. So over and out. Atma, namaste. Bye, guys.
Bye.